Welcome back, guys. If you are just joining us, this is INX Prime Live. Remember, we are on your screens every single Monday to Friday between the hours of 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Now, today we are thrilled to welcome Qudsiyah Kassim. Now, she is a knowledgeable and passionate dietitian. With her expertise in food science and nutrition, she's here to dispel common myths as well as some misconceptions about diabetes as well as food. Now, we'll talk about diabetes management, nutrition, and food choices to help you make informed and healthy decisions for yourself and for your loved ones. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to INX Prime, Qudsiyah.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure having you. I want to get straight into this conversation though. I know many people believe that sugar is normally the main culprit when it comes to diabetes, right? However, there are other factors that are at play. Can you explain to us how factors like, your genetics, also your weight, and also other health conditions can contribute towards the development of diabetes?
Sure. So I think I need to firstly start off by explaining the two main types of diabetes. So you have type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune condition. There's basically a destruction of your insulin producing cells in your pancreas. So therefore, a type 1 diabetic will not be producing any insulin at all. This is not dietary related. It's hereditary. It's an autoimmune condition. Whereas type 2 diabetes, on the other hand, is not just caused by consuming too much sugar alone. There are other factors that go together with consuming too much sugar. Okay. There are genetic conditions. There are things like being overweight, being obese, not exercising, not having any aerobic activity in your life, a sedentary lifestyle. So together, these factors with eating too much sugar will cause diabetes. It's not just eating too much sugar on its own.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And I mean, that's very interesting in that sense as well. I just wanted to know, in terms of some of those myths and misconceptions as well, what are some of the most common misconceptions about diabetes and food that you have come across in your time or in your work as a dietitian?
There's so many. But from the top of my head, I think the worst one for me was a lot of people believe green apples are better than red apples, saying that green apples won't increase your blood sugar levels and red apples will. There's no such thing. And another big thing is that diabetics should cut out sugar or carbohydrates completely. It's definitely not what it is. You don't need to cut out your carbohydrates completely. Yes, you do need to cut down on sugar and you do need to eat your good carbs, your complex carbs rather than your simple carbs. But cutting out carbohydrates completely is a disaster on its own.
No, that's very, very true. I mean, I'm just looking at some of the comments and questions coming in from social media. We actually have a question coming in as well from Kagiso. Kagiso wanted to know some of the practical tips that you can share when it comes to managing diabetes. He says in terms of meal planning, food choices, and navigating social situations as well where food is involved.
So I know it's very difficult navigating a social gatherings. I have diabetics in my family as well. So the best would honestly be to see a dietitian. Look, most medical aids do provide a dietitian consult once or twice a year and to get a personalized meal plan. That would be the best. But off the top of my head, I would say eat a healthy, balanced diet. Make sure you focus on your good starches, your good carbohydrates. Avoid simple carbohydrates, avoid sugary foods, jams, donuts, sugar, sweet things, basically. You also want to include a lot of vegetables in your diet. At least half of your plate should have vegetables on it. You also want to always eat a protein or fat with your carbohydrates and not just carbohydrates on your own. Something also very interesting that came up in a journal in 2019. It was a study done saying that if you eat your carbohydrate foods first, like your vegetables or your proteins, and then eat carbohydrates after, there's a less likely chance that your blood glucose levels will increase. In terms of social gatherings, I know it's difficult. I would suggest don't fill your plates up with carbs, don't fill it up with cake and pastries and donuts. Rather go for your healthier options and try and always make sure there's a protein on your plate. So instead of just taking a slice of cake and all of that, make sure you fill your plate with vegetables where possible. If there's no vegetables available, then take something with a protein, go for a chicken skewer or beef skewers as well as your cake. You don't have to cut down on the sugary things at parties. Just portion control. And if there are no vegetables or any other foods available to you, then portion control. Instead of taking four different pastries, just take one and eat that one and then have like a glass of water or something else.
No, that's very, very true. I'm just looking at some of the other comments and questions coming in. I mean, one of the questions I really do want to share with you, it's from Jessica as well. She was saying, out of all of the different fast food outlets out there, would you say that Nando's is the most healthiest out of all of them as a dietitian?
I wouldn't say it's the most healthiest, and honestly, none of your takeouts are actually that healthy, but it is considerably healthier than others, considering that it's grilled. But one must remember that they are still using sauces. They are still frying, their chips and stuff are still fried. Their potato wedges are loaded with sauce.
Mm.
Their burgers are loaded with sauce. And all of those is where your calories and your extra fat and your salt comes in.
Yeah, no, that's very, very true. And I mean, that's very unique to also understand. I just wanted to touch on, this whole concept of diabetes as well. We know that a lot of people speak about, sugar, and they emphasize the fact that a lot of food that are sugary, obviously then result in someone having a higher chance of getting diabetes. But there's also a lot of other foods out there that perhaps are low in sugar but are still delicious and they still taste really, really good. Can you name some of those type of foods for our audience as well? In fact, if they're looking for alternatives to the sugary stuff.
Okay, so I must just say that it's not only sugar-free that you're looking for, because remember, once you're diabetic, any starch or any carbohydrate that you eat will be digested into glucose. Glucose is basically sugar. So any of these foods will contribute to a high glucose level. So just because something is sugar-free doesn't mean it's carbohydrate-free. I mean, if you have a look at sugar-free biscuits, for example, you can't eat five or six or seven biscuits thinking nothing's going to happen because that biscuit is still a carbohydrate. A lot of other times, sugar-free foods are not that healthy. They are filled with fat and sweeteners and other things to make up for the sugar component that's not there. So I wouldn't say to a diabetic, go and get something that's sugar-free because it needs to be carb-free as well or low carb. So ideas for snacks and things like that would be your vegetable sticks, cucumber and carrot sticks, yogurt, low-fat yogurts, popcorn, portion control though, 2 cups, not more than that, avocados, nuts, things like that are low in carb, high in fiber, and have no sugar in them. I would rather go for something that's naturally sugar-free rather than something that has been sweetened with a sweetener.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm just looking at some of the other comments and questions coming in. I know that James had a comment as well. He was saying, unfortunately, he's allergic to avocado, so it actually limits him a lot. But then we do have another question from Mati, and Mati actually wanted to know if you can share maybe perhaps your favorite recipe, or anything that's quite nutritious in that sense for someone who does have diabetes, just without, obviously a kind of a recipe that they could use without it compromising their health in any way. Do you have one of those?
Sure. From the top of my head, I can give you something easy because I can't exactly read the recipe out. But I would say for a snack, instead of going for a bag of chips, I would maybe go for homemade popcorn. But your portion control again would be 2 cups of popcorn. Another nice thing that you can actually make is roasted chickpeas. So it's a can of chickpeas. You rinse it under cold water and drain it. Pat the chickpeas dry and then lay them out on a oven tray. Sprinkle your chickpeas with olive oil and then rub in your spices of choice. But remember, if you're hypertensive, to avoid the salt in your your salty seasonings. So you would go for things like cumin, coriander, garlic, herbs, things like that. Just whatever spices that you want, put it over the chickpeas and then roast your chickpeas for 20 minutes in the oven. And the last 5 minutes, put your oven on grill and let them get nice and crispy. A half a cup serving of that would be perfect for a diabetic to have as a snack instead of a bag of chips or something unhealthy. Another nice recipe that I really like for breakfast is egg muffins. So you take eggs as many as you would like, you whisk them up and throw in some chives, some onion, mushrooms, spinach, any vegetables of your choice. Obviously, try and avoid the starchy vegetables. Put in a little bit of sweet corn or corn, and then put them into a muffin trays and then bake those. And you have little egg muffins that you can eat for breakfast instead of having a high carb or fatty breakfast.
No, that sounds delicious, actually. But just in closing, before we do let you go, I mean, I'm just thinking about a lot of the young people in South Africa and all around the world. You know, we have this new phenomenon where people are sitting on their phones or they're on Netflix and they're watching, 2 or 3 hours of content and they don't actually recognize how much of food they're actually eating. What advice do you have for our youth of the country in particular when it comes to eating healthy?
I would definitely say have a variety of food. So if you're a person who likes to sit on social media or watch Netflix or something like that, instead of grabbing a bag of chips from the cupboard, maybe take those chips, but half the packet, and then have some fruit as well on the side, or some vegetable sticks. Instead of just eating a whole load of carbohydrates, make sure you get in your fiber-rich foods, your nuts, your homemade popcorn, fruits, berries. Berries are amazing. Strawberries, fruit sticks. So instead of just grabbing carbs only, make yourself like a little bowl, small bowls, one with your crisps or one with your fruit, one with vegetable sticks. And that way you're having a variety of food and not just loading on the sugar or loading on the carbs.
Kutsia, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you as well. Thank you so much for joining us here
Thank
on
you.
INX Prime Live.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, guys. That is Qudsiyah Kassim, who is actually a dietitian, just telling us about the importance of managing diabetes as well as understanding all the different misconceptions and food myths that are out there when it comes to diabetes as well. Now, on that note, we are going to take a quick ad break, but we'll come right back.